It's not that late, is it? Josh?
Pretty much your way.
I should.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'll call meeting to order.
I'll find a pen.
Any public comments?
Thank you.
Any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none, move forward. Approval of minutes for August. Page 2.
I want to go with August
Second.
Who was the nomination? Steve? And who seconded?
Nobody
I did.
yet. Oh, Matt did, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay.
minutes.
Moved and seconded to approve the August 19th minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Agenda, approval for the agenda. And, oh no, this is the bills that was amended. Never mind.
Got it. Where are the minutes? Page 3? I don't have a page 3.
The page, it's actually page 1. So it's the
I know,
second
that's weird.
page.
Gotcha, all right.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, I see.
yeah, it looks like
There
it's
is a page
misnumbered.
3, yeah.
So, yeah, along those lines, since we're on the agenda, are these items out of order with where they are? And, well, I know they are because I sifted through it
Yeah,
a number
I-
of times, and I still would, I know you put page numbers on a couple of the items, but the rest of these, even if they were out of order, if the page number were there, it would make it easier for me to.
Right, I agree, and I'm just noticing that we've got 1, 2, and then we go to page 5.
Well, it's because it's doubled up. If you look at the bottom,
Oh,
it says
yes.
page 3, but then there's a 1 below it.
Yes.
Well, so that's just the minutes. I'm talking about items 7, A, B, C, and D. 7B is the last item in our packet,
Right.
so C and D shouldn't.
Oh,
I mean-
C and D, basically I'm just giving an oral update. There were no action items related to those.
Okay, yeah, so anyhow, still, it would be helpful to me, because some of these
To have
items took up
something.
a lot of
Okay.
pages.
Yeah.
It would still be helpful to me to have a page number, so I don't even have to, I mean, I'm looking at it thinking, well, B
Okay.
probably is before C and D, so I wasn't looking at the end of the packet.
Okay. Yep, good point.
Simple, page number. Okay.
So
Any
I'll
other
discuss
discussion?
the agenda. There's no other.
Motion by Steve.
Second.
All right, second by Lynn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Consent items, page 5, and that is actually page 5.
Yep. Okay, and I put on everybody's place an amended bills payable. And then we have 2 bills payable. One was on September 15th, where I met up with Josh to sign those checks with respect to that 319 non-point source reduction grant. And so that's why we have 2 pages of bills payable, one as of September 15th, and then the one for October 21st, and that is amended because there were 2 additional checks that were done that I did yesterday. And the total for the bills payable for today is $15,219.
So that City of Winona reimbursement for canoe use, is that?
That was for the surface water assessment grant, and they were gonna let us use it for free, but with the state grant, they wanted to see where we paid $25 a day that went out and collected samples for the lake monitoring work. And we were originally scheduled to do it 5 times, but because of the shipping issues, we had to go out 2 extra times to collect commercial A. So 7 times, $175.
Is that what they're charging for their canoe rental now? I thought it was like a season. I thought it was $25.
Yeah, it is just a season, but tied with the grant, they wanted to see $25 per use. That was kind of in their background, that was an appropriate fee to pay for a rental.
As long as it's free money.
Pardon,
As long as it's
yes.
free money.
Yeah,
Seems like government taxpayers should be treated the same as everyone else. If it's $25 a season, it should be, I mean, it's the principle of the issue, not the dollars.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah, and,
If someone scrutinizes it and I get called out for approving it and paying someone 5 times for something that they should have only paid once for, or no, how many times is that?
7 times.
7 times for something that they
Mhm.
should have. That'll,
Yeah.
I
that's
would,
a-
I would have constituents who don't appreciate my political positions who would call me out and make an issue.
Yep, and that was a state of Minnesota. In fact, I initially didn't have anything in there for the community use because the city said we could just use it. And, but that was Kelly O'Hara, the project manager, says, no, you have to put down the statewide acceptable rate is $25 per use. And so that's what.
So is it just proving that we used it, or what? I don't
No, we used
understand.
it.
What's that?
We used it.
No, that's what I mean. They're using the I realize it's $175, but it is well. That's why I called it out. I'm like $175.
Yep.
You can rent those things all season for next to nothing down there. I was just
buy
trying-
one for $175.
Right. So that's my question. Are they? 'Cause I mean, this could be year after year after year, which I mean, I realize what it is, but I'm just, curiosity kills the cat here. They're saying that if we don't show $25 every time we go, this is the proof that we did it, was that we paid somebody $25 for a canoe, is saying that we did it. Is that what they're after?
No, I think it's just, with this grant, that's using or renting a watercraft to do monitoring. The surface water assessment grant folks say $25 is what you should be paying. I actually had a lesser amount and says, no, we need to increase that to, we were going out there 5 times scheduled, and then it turned out to be 7.
I totally would have no problem with the $25, but it's like the, $1,500 government hammer. If it's $25 for a season, it's $25 for a season, and for us to sit here and approve it really for 7 seasons and only use it once, to me, that's just unethical.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the $175 so much.
I don't vote to approve $25.
It just sets a bad precedent.
It does, yeah. It just says
It proves that we don't do our
because
homework.
everybody knows what it costs in Winona to rent a canoe, and they're going to say, "Wait a minute, how many canoes did you rent?" They're next to them. I would say, Sheila, that's a little, whatever comment came from them, unless they say we have to do that as a purpose. Just moving forward, say, hey, you can rent these things for $25. It makes us look bad doing this.
And I might say too that they were, Parks and Rec were very accommodating. They came over and set up everything for us when they were not open for the public. So they worked around our schedule when we needed to do it, so they came, they had somebody come over. They had everything, all we had to do was jump in the canoe and go.
We're doing this outside business hours?
No, but outside their business hours for the public.
So it was additional cost for
Yep.
them?
Yep, it was.
So that's something like that, I guess.
So, usually government operates on a very limited schedule, so I'm surprised that our government was outside of their hours. When were we doing this, like
Well,
at night or something, or what?
No,
Yeah.
I forget what their hours were, but there were times that we went in the morning before they were open to the public, because it was open just in the afternoon. They couldn't do it when they, of course, had different children's activities going on, and so we worked around that. But they were very, very accommodating to make sure that it fit our monitoring schedule, and then those 2 extra times that we had to do it, had to call them up and say, the shipping, the samples got destroyed, we have to do it again. And And so they came and set everything up when they were not in operation at the Parks and Rec.
I just moving forward though, Sheila, I mean, we should be operating in the capacity in which they operate, you know, we want to try to, and this is not, I mean, I realize it's $100, but it's the concept of government, which is working within the hours which they're capable of, and whoever's doing those grants or doing the water should say, hey, when are you available? That's when I can do it, unless they need to take it at a certain time of the day. And then just frivolously paying 7 times the amount that, I don't even live in Winona, and I know how much it costs to rent a canoe down there. And all of a sudden it's, you know, somebody can take and pick this thing apart and be like, why are you paying 7 times the rental fee? It just makes us as a board look bad. And then it's, you mean you can't go take a sample in the hours in which they operate? You know, that we gotta ask these favors for them to come in, you know? It just kinda, it does look bad. And I realize it's only $175, but it doesn't.
The other constraint is we were trying to work within the confines of when the samples had to be at pack and mail to be shipped to get there. So that was, there were.
I understand.
I'm just glad the monitoring season's over because this year was a lot more difficult than last year.
We just, well, I think just moving forward for stuff like that, we just gotta play by the rules, you know, a little bit. But I just had a question because I saw it for the canoe use, and I knew right away the canoes don't cost $175. I mean,
They didn't until a year ago or whatever, maybe
No.
2 years ago, they were free. They didn't have-
you just read it. That's why I was like, did we like take
No,
that
it's
thing for the
25
whole year or
season.
something?
That's certainly not 25 a day.
So it just caught my attention because we're all right there.
Government's already paid for the canoes.
Maybe we're
Government owns
gonna
them.
come up
Government's
with
paid for
a
the
different time for shipping or driving the water up anyway, so maybe we could like think about those two things together and just try to.
Not trying to nitpick and shit, you get a point. But let's, if somebody come in and saw it, I mean, I saw it. I'm like, what? You know, somebody's gonna see that there. I mean, so. Just try to be careful.
So this requirement was coming from the state.
So I guess I would ask that at least our minutes reflect that we had this discussion, so that if anyone comes back, we can say, you know, this board seriously questioned it.
At least we're aware of things like that happen.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then, you know, the reason given why it's here.
What do we got? We got the consent agenda approved.
No, we didn't.
Not yet. We gotta do that, yep. Any other discussion on that one? Bills payable here.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I have one quick, that Regen Egg
Mm-hmm.
Lab. Oh yeah, that was, okay, never mind, I remember what that was for. Yep, okay, never mind. So we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. On board reports. Let's start. Lynn, you want to start?
Oh, got a few things, I guess. Our techs are getting called, of course, for surveying design as the crops come off. Equip sign up. Although continual, we'll have a ranking period opening soon. We're planning for projects. Piggybacking with MAWQCP funds on those often. Process of reviewing grant administration funds for MAWQCP and MDA. We'll be coming back to the board by the end of the year. MDA also has a Regional Conservation Partners Program, RCPP, that provides dedicated program equipment funds to the MAWQCP projects. Test kits were sent out by the Homestead Lab to randomly selected well owners. Longshaw's requested kits in our office, and we should have those soon. Anyone can pick up to get their water tested. Those who can show a test that their nitrate levels are over the safe limit are eligible to apply for cost share funds for under-sink water treatment, and well reconstruction could even be a consideration. And then the final thing is a little sad. Our Terry Helbig resigned due to health problems and not coming back, so now we're in the process of finding someone to fill out his term. So That's it. Thanks.
Things are just coming along smooth, I guess. Not really.
What your life?
Yeah, not a lot to report.
Homestead County's busy, but nothing out of the ordinary.
You got that big growth problem all the time.
Well, we did have the census. I don't know. The census reported that Homestead County grew about 20,000 people. Actually, we thought it'd probably be more than that, but still 20,000 people is a lot of people.
So how many's in there now? How many total?
Population-wise, I think it's 165.
Plus 20 now? Or
No,
that's
no,
with the
that's
20?
with the 20.
So Rochester's 2/3 of that.
So it grew. Actually, the fastest growing in the area, city of Byron and Sturville and our Orinoco area were the fastest growing in the county, population-wise. So it shows what we're doing. Then the rest of the counties are pretty much status quo. Our reports show. It's something different. So what that means is we're pretty sure the House of Representatives seat will shift more toward Rochester. Well, that will happen, and more of a Senate seat will shift that way too. So it shows how the political gain happens with that. So there's a lot of jobs in Homestead County. People are coming.
Let's see. The rest, I guess I'll just throw in this WCD over to the. So we're still looking for, we have an interim manager who wants to do a great job for SWCD for Monroe County. We're still looking for a manager. Also, Lance Klussig resigned in good standing. So he is, that was effective last week, Thursday. So we actually have 2 employees out. Wanda is doing a nervously good job. She's doing better than what I think she gives herself credit for. Mike consent, that basically is half of our staff right now. So it's her and Amanda kind of holding the fort down, and our thought process as a board, and I'll speak on my own behalf, is if we got to take a 6-month hiatus and regroup, we don't know whether we're going to restructure this whole thing back. So I'm actually kind of excited about it because it's nice to get some new blood in sometimes and do things a little bit different and shake the stir pot a little bit. So I think it'll go well. I think as a board we've had a couple ideas, but we're just patiently waiting for the right people to come now, rather than just filling the position with a warm body. So that's probably the biggest thing we've got going on. So we'll probably be kind of scaling down on projects as to what they can handle.
It's going to feel inadequate after watching when you're very well prepared.
Speech there and everything.
We're working on our jail, keeps getting delayed, trying to work through that process, but improve and moving forward. And then the controversial thing, really not related to this group too much, is our push to be the first county in the state of Minnesota to have a county-wide mask mandate. And it would be the first one in the state and the first one in the 5-state area. And then along with that, the county board doesn't have the authority to do that. So we first have to amend the ordinance so that to give ourselves the authority to enact a countywide mask mandate, which I feel is probably the bigger issue, because then if the county board wants to enact vaccine mandates, or you can't have a big Slurpee mandate, or fast food is getting you fat, anything in the name of health, the county board, right now that all has to go through a public hearing, public vetting process. This would eliminate all the public input and just say any 3 people on the board can have this power. So So the ordinance is what concerns me, but the county's, the constituency, I'd say, is far more in tune with, we don't want to wear masks, which is the emails I'm getting. If this goes through, then of course we'd all be required here, sitting here to be wearing masks too, so.
So Steve, the Monona County Board is not the Board of Health like Olmsted County?
Yes.
Yeah,
The county health board.
as the health board, but that doesn't have, you don't have authority? I kind of,
The chair can do it in an emergency situation, and then the county board can vote to do it, but our chair is not taking that position. So this would eliminate that too, so just any 3 county board members could just say, we don't care what the chair says, we're just gonna enact it. But they can't move forward doing that without the chair first enacting it, so they can uphold it.
not familiar with that.
Right now, the 3 county board members don't have the power. The state statutes and the county ordinances don't give them the power. If one of those 3 were the chair right now, then they could.
But, it's, okay.
Because it'd be like the mayor and
Because I don't think the state is, we don't have the emergency declaration going on now. I would,
Yeah, but the county can create their own emergency.
they could create their own, okay.
We're operating under our own emergency right now, under COVID standards. They asked to have that extended yet again, so that's been extended, so they're saying, anything, our public health department comes to our meetings regularly, and they're, they were very concerned about this last uptick here a month or 2 ago in the COVID cases, and that's where the push for the mask mandate came from. So anyhow, that's what's kind of playing out, and it really isn't germane to this board, I guess, but it's something to think about.
Okay.
Pretty quiet, constant, soil, water, couple contracts passed. Other than that, that's about it. No personnel changes. So. Sounds good.
Thanks, James. All right. 7A.
Okay. Financial update for totals for the Whitewater's checking and money market account as of August 31st was at just under $58,000, at $57,931, and then at the end of September that went up because we had received some payments on grants, $86,082. And also we have, at our last meeting, we signed the audit management letter, and now we have received the draft audit from Peterson's. And nothing really different from last year. And so we look for a motion to accept it, and then we'll receive the final at the December meeting.
It's something like 8,000 down on the balance or whatever it came from last time, so at least we're
Yeah,
remedying the balance question a bit there, I guess, but
yeah.
Sheila, it says update, but you're looking for a motion to approve the?
Yes,
So it's
to
not-
move the draft.
It's an action item, not just an update.
Yeah.
Right, correct.
So we won't need that. Yep. Good motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Matt and Bob, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Nitrogen fertilizer management plan agreement.
Okay, and what was included in your packet that was sent out by Ann Schwerl, that's what I had available before I went out of town on the 12th, and just came back on the 20th. And so while I was gone, it got updated, and so that's what I sent out in the email yesterday. is the updated, and this is still considered a draft, although it is going through signature process with the Department of Ag. And this is what I mentioned to Josh a couple times earlier too. As far as the nitrogen fertilizer management plan and the groundwater protection rule, there are 3 DWISMAs, the drinking water source management areas in the Whitewater, Elgin, Utica, and Altura, that have high nitrates in those drinking water supplies for those communities. So after the review process, I know with this, what had happened is they were trying and implement this throughout all the, remember the township testing program that each of the counties worked through with the SWCDs. So based on the township testing results, they did the first round of testing and then the second round. And with the second round, MDA staff came to the sites that had high nitrates and they evaluated the site and determined if, basically because they're trying to figure out the commercial nitrogen fertilizer application rates, if that was a contributing factor to high nitrates. So it was supposed to be initially for the entire townships, but after the review and input from agricultural groups in that process, it got narrowed down to just the drinking water supply areas. So just those 3 communities in the Whitewater. And so that those 3 DWISMAs are in what is called level 2. And basically it's acknowledging that we have high nitrates in the drinking water supplies for these communities, and working with the landowners and farmers that operate land within that DWISMA, working with them. Basically the team would be farmers who work there, well, 15 to 20 farmers, if there's that many farmers, and then a support group, which would be Greg Klinger with UVM, Don Bernal with the Department of Ag, and then local entity, Beaver Whitewater. And just to kind of going through the data, and then that team, basically the farmers, are responsible for coming up with best management practices and then alternative practices that can be used in that area, and then submitted to the commissioner for the Department of Ag. That's the ultimate goal. They have until June of 2023 to do that. And this would include having 3 to 4 meetings a year with these farmer groups.
What's in it for the landowner?
Pardon?
What's in it for the landowner?
The landowner is if identifying the best management practices that they'll be using. Maybe they want to use less commercial fertilizer, more organic. I know there's a whole suite of things that they can do. They can look at alternative methods.
But I mean, what's in it? Why would is this the state coming down saying you will do this? Or is the state coming to them and saying, we would like you to do this? Or is this the state coming to them saying, here's some information, we hope it helps you, you have till 2023 to report back to it? I'm a little bit lost as to what the objective is, and if I was a landowner and they came to me, what's in it for me? What incentivizes me to say, I got a deadline by 2023 to put a best management practice into place?
And they can decide what those best management practices
But I mean,
are.
still, regardless of whether decided
Right.
first, I mean, why do I want to play the game? Leave me alone. I don't want government involved, right?
Well,
What happens if we get to that point? That's my question. What involves, if I come as a state official, as a farmer or a landowner, why do I want to play ball?
I just have a conversation.
This is for Sheila, though. I'm asking.
Yeah, so the idea is to engage and farmers are problem solvers, so the problem is we have high nitrates. What can we do about it?
But I mean, why would they, so that's my question though. What's the approach? I'm in sales. I sell in 7 states. And there's sometimes people in Michigan are completely different than people here, just the persona, the genre, and you get on a ridge and you might have 7 different personalities. 2 of them just say, I want nothing to do with government. I don't want to expose anything. I don't want to tell you what I'm doing. All I'm doing is signing up to get in trouble. Okay, so what's in it for them to start saying, hey, I want to do, how are they perceiving somebody coming to their farm saying, you come to us with the way you think you're going to solve a problem that you may or may not even care about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So that's my question. What's in it for them to say, hey, I even want to get involved with this?
Well, I suppose
Other than a feel good.
yeah, I suppose if nothing can be achieved, I mean, if no farmers in a DWISMA that are operating in DWISMA are able to come up with their recommendations on what works with their operations, I don't know. They wouldn't. I suppose the next step is after June 2023. I don't know if that means. Well, and that's the other thing too. The Department of Health will be doing an assessment of each of these DWISMAs to figure out what the lag time is. How long would it take for whatever's happening at the surface to be reflected in that groundwater supply?
I think we could talk about all the aftermaths, but this is, so this is more of a board discussion. I was just curious. I was trying to, without reading every single thing in here, but if I was a landowner right now, a farmer especially, knowing what I know of agriculture and how it's like the government's coming at this way saying, if you don't feel good, you must not care about anything. But as soon as I make a mistake, I got the other side coming at me going, here's a fine, write the check out, we want the money, you screwed up. And the last thing I would want to do is be like, here, let me show you what I'm doing. Because you got the government coming at this way going, oh, you're so good, and we're so kind, and we're here to help. And then you got the government going, you don't have a choice, write the check out, we don't care, here's your fine. EPA, we've got entire structures coming down saying, you're polluting the water, here's your phosphorus, what are you doing wrong, why are you doing it? And that's the problem I'm seeing 5 years now sitting on this board, is we've got this side fighting this side. And as a landowner and a farmer, guys, I wouldn't want to show anything. I'd be so afraid I'm going to screw up. I'd rather go to my local person or someone, do my own research and start figuring out my own best management practices. The last thing I want to hear is, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Right? Who said that? Famous Ronald Reagan quote, right? Last most dangerous 9 words. So I think, I love this stuff, but what are we doing on the backside to encourage these people to get involved? Because we can have I know where you're going already, Lynn. We can have all the feel goods and all this, and oh my gosh, and I feel good, and we should do this, and if we don't, the government's going to step in. Well, the government's already stepping in from both sides, and they're squeezing the landowners. The landowners are going, man, I don't want to do this.
Maybe you don't know where I'm going, but could I just share my opinion?
Yeah.
I have felt for a while that a lot of the whole conservation business is just everyone circling a pile of money and nothing really gets done. And you say, farmers don't want to have nothing to do with the government, but they're still getting the farm program. So I think the whole thing is a disaster before you ever start. Because of the farm program, people can farm marginal land, pay maybe more rent than they should, which forces them to pour on the nitrogen to get the absolute top yields. I mean, it's just a big circle
Not
of
this year.
money going to the top, whether it's land owners or people buying John Deere because they get too much government subsidies. I know some dairy guys that are getting $50,000 a month now for feed cost incentive. I mean, it's not a business anymore with farming. And that's the sad part. But because of the federal government, we don't really have a chance here, because maybe they'd have to grow a little alternative crop or something like that if you had to kind of make your own way. And that's my...
I don't disagree. I mean, there's variables in there that we could talk about, but I'm in the same boat. The worst thing that ever happened is the government got involved with farming. But the problem with it is it still is indicative, because if the government stepped out of farming altogether, eventually the cash basis, everything would change. You just go back to where it would be its own thing. The problem with it is what's that point? And how do you get out of it? And so that's why I always said, if this is what I always said, if I was in charge, I'd subsidize a third crop. Force everybody to put a third crop. That's what I would subsidize, because then it would begin to balance itself out. And you don't subsidize the two main ones. Everybody would change their mindset, put a third crop in, there's a lot less problems. We manage our nitrogen better, we manage our rotations better, we manage our tillage better, and away we go. And then I think you could actually phase that programs out and let farmers be farmers. But it doesn't negate what we have here. So the question is when we go to these three towns, here's what I'll tell you. The problem is sometimes when you start to expose these things is the news media grabs a hold of it too and says, Altura has poor water, high nitrates, because an address to a well outside of town was Altura.
As an Altura address.
And Josh has to go on KTTC and explain to the whole world and gets literally 100 phone calls from all the members saying, no, our well water's fine. Please read the thing we put in there every year that shows you all the testing that we do. And this is government and news agencies and farmers and government squeezing. And it just gets a little bit frustrating to me to come to a farmer and say, let's do a best management practice plan. And I'm not saying people aren't going to do it, but when we've got pressure coming this way and we've got a feel-good pressure coming this way, I hope that people do, because if they don't, eventually it's going to be regulated. But I'm just exposing it that if I was a landowner today, knowing the conversations I've had with literally hundreds, if not thousands of landowners throughout the Midwest, it seems like, yeah, I'll take the check because I can get it, but I don't want you handing me anything in my operation because I'm just trying to survive. You know.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I didn't see anything in there about government payments. I thought it looked more like farmer-led council that we had in the past. But I did read it word for word, and then the more I read it, the more questions I had, and then I reread it. Everything in our packet, word for word. When I first joined this board, it was very much a kind of a stamp of approval kind of board to move government programs forward. And this is the first time I've sat on a board with people, that are wanting to understand exactly what we're doing.
Question.
So my number of questions that I came up with was, first of all, it says that in order to be in violation of these WSMA regulations, it's if, what I read in there was that if any time in the last 10 years the nitrates exceeded the maximum number, that makes us all, if we agree to this, we're all saying we agree that these places have nitrogen problems. So, I mean, I would want to see all that information and see what, was there just one spike at one time? Did something, a point source happen? And then I'm also wondering, is this even all in our watershed area? Because I think the water on the other side of Altura, does that all flow to the Whitewater? I don't know.
You're talking about through Bear Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bear Creek doesn't.
Yeah, so why is this board dealing with water outside of our watershed? Which seems to me like, why wouldn't this be going to the new one watershed, one plan that has a much more broad area?
Basically everything east of 33 and 247 is going to go to the Whitewater.
Well, and Plainview.
Or west, I mean.
And then some of that goes to the Indian Creek area.
Snake Creek, Indian Creek.
Yeah, so I'm looking at large areas of this, I feel, not even being in our jurisdiction. But the biggest problem that I had with this was, all the abbreviations for FMP, so fertilizer management practice area, I get all that. But the biggest problem to me is that we're agreeing to the groundwater protection rule. So we're saying that we support the groundwater protection rule, and we're in agreement with the groundwater protection rule, and we're kind of the driving force behind telling these farmers what kind of, the whole idea of, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea that you shouldn't put nitrogen on in the fall. You probably shouldn't, but I mean, to me, that was the crux of this is the groundwater protection rule, trying to use this board to infiltrate the community and get the community to get behind the groundwater protection rule, and that's kind of what I gleaned out of it, and I wasn't, I guess, yeah, I agree with doing the right thing, definitely, but this seems like a higher level government coming down and trying to use us to get buy-in from the community for what they're pushing.
I see it as
That's what I felt.
I see it as this all the time. And I think this way is better than this way. But I feel like the landowners are getting trapped right now. They don't, that's the discussion because I tell people I sit on these boards and they say, yeah, I feel like one side's trying to help me and the other side's waiting for me to screw up.
Well, in the whole government being involved, it says in here, Sheila, that you'd be the one responsible for picking the farmers that would be part of this, right?
Working with Don Renaud, identifying, well, first of all, going through parcel.
But you'd be the person, that's what it said here. So then, I have full trust in you, but reality is unfortunately, you could walk out the door and be run over by a bus. And so I'm giving this to a position, not to a person. And that person might have a way political agenda, and they're going to say, well, these farmers agree, I'm only going to pick land stewardship partners. So, I mean, we're putting a program in place that these people might have a complete different political agenda than my constituency as a whole.
And it's looked at as what should be.
Yeah, and it looks like the government putting something in putting a political agenda in place.
But Steve, okay, I read this agenda. You pick a group of farmers to present your views. If you want to go run and hide and don't participate, you won't be heard at all. And that's what you and I see all the time. Nobody runs for school boards, nobody runs for town.
But this is not an elected, this is an appointed.
No, the other people's gets their views heard.
Appointed by her, that's what it says in here.
No, she picks the group. I think that's a little, no. So basically, I read this, that you pick a group to promote your values and promote your ideas, so maybe you can counteract other people's values or how they think the world should run. Again, I've been on so many committees where nobody shows up, and the ones that show up get what they want. It's totally wrong. But again, if us farmers want to sit back and say, oh, just leave us alone, you're going to get run over so damn fast. That's the problem.
Well, and so what there's definitely two sides to this, and so what I'm seeing is that some of the silence are starting to come out a little bit, and there is a fair amount of, fair amount. We've got one side there saying, hey, I better start paying attention to this. And this year, more than anything, with high fertilizer prices, we're seeing a lot of people, how do I manage my manure better? How do I get more on it? How do I treat my pits? How do I treat my manure? I can't even buy nitrogen. What do I do then, right? Well, here's an option, here's an option. And you can't find it in the Midwest. So there's going to be a lot of talk about this. And so we see that side, then you see the other side that says, yep, I want nothing to do this, because if I get involved, I might get exposed.
Well, that's the worst thing you can do.
That is the worst thing you can do.
That's the worst thing you do. If I don't want to get involved, leave me alone.
Yep.
The world just go on.
Yep.
And next thing you know, you have rules coming that nobody said nothing, and they.
Well, I think that attests to Steve's point, because oftentimes the people that have the time are the ones that show up, but they may not necessarily be the one that you want.
Yeah, that's
in charge.
correct.
We have political farmers that take different political positions in our county, and I hate that things always come back to politics, but many times these groups will be made up of people that are all sitting on one side of the issue, and they won't even approach like Farm Bureau, which kind of has a much more conservative view on things, and And the large conventional farmers won't even be at the table. And it'll be a bunch of small organic farmers who want to impose their will on the big community, and the government is facilitating that. So, I mean, I have a problem with how that's all set up, and I don't know. I'm not saying that that will happen, but it could happen, and it's not Sheila, it's that we're giving the power to that position to, that person could cherry pick anyone out of the community that they want.
You can't run an election for every position in the world for committees.
Well, maybe there doesn't need to be, if it's the government picking people out of the community to put on boards, that's
how
inappropriate.
that's how the world runs. You have committees. If you're worried about people picking certain people, you won't get nothing done.
I'm wondering if, just looking at this, like this one section, page 4, section 1, saying the majority of these members must underline be local farmers and their proper crop advisors, custodians.
And that's one thing
I don't know, it just seems to me like that's trying to answer your objections as far as as far as government.
Yeah, I'm not
saying this is what you're gonna have.
I go back to my
do.
original thing. So this is what it stems to, and I think what it's boiled down to, and maybe this will answer that, is it's all great, and there's nothing anybody said actually in a way that I don't agree with in one fashion. Here's what we tend to see. The people that it probably most pertains to are the least ones that are going to be potentially active because they're either too busy, too much going on. They should be the ones.
I agree.
So what happens is the inactive ones step into play. They set a precedent. The precedent becomes something that isn't necessarily feasible for the ones that should be there. So then the ones that should stay there just say, you go off into la la land, and these people begin to push an agenda. So that goes back to my original question, and that's to Steve's point. Oftentimes you have the one people in there that want to push an agenda that fits what they're doing. The reality of it is it should be focused probably on another group. And that group, to his side, says, hey, it's this. And to your side, it's in here, but classify that. Must be. Well, if I have 10 acres, which qualifies for an ag program, and the guy over here has 1,000 acres, and the way I farm my 10 acres and the way he farms his 1,000 acres are completely different. But if I'm going to let my 10 acres and what I know of that 10 acres, try to tell this guy that's got 1,000 acres how to farm, and we put it in a best management practice, what he can do and what I can do are two different things. And this guy should be there too, equally with a voice, but oftentimes it isn't those people that show up. So it goes back to my original question. Knowing this whole discussion already, what's in it for the farmer to make him show up? Why does the guy that should be there, who never shows up, what's in it for him to get in there? To get him involved? That's my question. Because I know what's going to happen. It's going to lead down the road that we're all talking about, because that's what it almost always does. And to Matt's point, whoever shows up is probably going to get their way.
And that's
Steve's point.
It's one person against
And then the
other.
outside reads it just like the drinking well and water in Altura, because the news story had an address associated with Altura, and then we're all out. Everybody thinks Altura's got this. Everybody thinks this is the way everybody should farm. And now we've got the misinformation again. It's a vicious circle, and it goes back to what Lynn says.
I don't disagree, Josh, but you gotta show up, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's my
so-
question. The first question asked in this
You
whole
just can't sit
discussion.
back and, oh,
What's going to get the people that should be there? What's the incentive for them to do this? And that's where it's lost, because there ain't enough. Now, right now, when I'm running around telling farmers all across the country, everywhere, we sell stuff everywhere. When somebody will open up and have a conversation with me, I tell them constantly, you gotta get this nitrogen thing figured out. You can't just keep buying it. Because if you don't, the government and somebody in an office someplace that thinks they know better than you is gonna tell you how to do it. oh, yeah, I know, we keep hearing that. And I just say, well, look at Europe. There's gonna come a day, you're not gonna do this on your own anymore. You're gonna be forced to farm out of a government office. And the sad part of it is what's gonna happen is it's gonna kill the family farm. It's gonna become corporate farming. That's my belief. And so I'm on this mission to save this thing, but I look at stuff holistically and understand all this. It comes back to, that's why I asked one question. I didn't ask who or what or how. I understand who's gonna be there. Because everything we talked about is gonna happen.
Once it's corporate, then I'm afraid it'll be like lots of huge corporations. They can pay off the right people in government to get by with things that a family farmer.
It goes
has to
like
push to
this.
the side.
Goes like
this.
Once you get to corporate, they just say, go talk to our lawyers.
Yeah.
And other industries are that way.
That's what I mean. It's going to go like this.
It's
So
gonna
the
go
only
like
way, because the government and the people involved with it, out of it feel good, will say, oh, we need to regulate and do all this for the better of us all, which actually squeezes the actual people out that care about it, right? And eventually it keeps, I mean, nobody can argue with government farms get bigger or smaller, get bigger. And it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it becomes corporate and corporate. And this is going to go overhead, and it goes right to what he says. And now all those people that had all those field goods, they're going to be banging on the doors of the corporations going, you guys are polluting our water. And they're going to go just get their lawyers out and say, sorry, do you want food or not?
Maybe that's a real plan though, because like in Davos, Switzerland, they got that conference and some people have the ideas that nobody should own anything. Everyone just rent or reuse things, you know, but then you think, well, who owns it then?
Okay. I know. So this is what I'm saying. So in an effort to, so my whole thing, I back this whole thing up and say, it's got to be left, the individual person has got to get involved and try to do what's right with the concept of what they do could be affecting others. The problem that I see in the industry is exactly what he's saying, and what you're saying. The wrong people are showing up. The wrong people are signing up for these things. How can we get other people involved? What's the incentive to actually get them there? That would be the challenge.
It is a challenge. And Josh, do you have any clients that are within any of the school districts?
We do, but the majority of what we do is distribution. So we're not,
Okay.
we don't do what the co-op does. We're
Right.
pulling soil samples and going active. We service co-ops. I mean, we service farms direct too, but we don't get into that. We're not the hands-on.
So it wouldn't be a good fit for you to be a part of this, any of these groups?
I think it would be, but I don't have time to keep going on all these boards and groups. It just gets to be too much, So it'd be very difficult for me to be on it.
The only real answer to what you're talking about is people need to be able to make as good a living or even better by doing it in a more, whatever you call it, eco-friendly, whatever we're looking at, way. And I mean, getting there though is the hard part, from here to there for some people, because if the ground is not much organic matter or anything, things just don't stay there for use of the crop, so then you need to put
It's
more.
in the benefit of anybody that owns land and begin to look at some of these things. The problem with it is that there's certain people that have more time than others, and there's certain people that don't want to be exposed. So the thing we brought up is this whole squeeze factor, then you got the time factor, and you got the I don't know factor, and so what ends up happening is I'm going to say the overly passionate people with a strong-willed agenda show up and begin to push that. It's even, you'll hear me say it over and over and over. I keep telling everybody on these boards, I'm not going to pick names out, but this whole no-till and cover crops is the only way to farm. You go up in the cities, that's all it is. You talk to other boards, that's the only way to farm. It's like,
I've been in groups.
what's that?
I've been in groups. Lynn,
And I
it's
keep
kind of
saying,
your
you know-
area. Could you find enough people over in Elgin, Plainview area?
No, it's
Careful.
It's like pulling hen's teeth, trying to get
It is.
The reality, yeah,
it
and
is.
that's just it. They want to bang that this is the only way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's think it's very possible to find that many people, but, you know, I'm just thinking people out loud. I know Maury Young ain't gonna be at the table, and Daly's ain't gonna be at the table, and there are people that are, you know, planting cover crops, doing the right thing. They're the ones that are gonna be, so, you know, there's one paragraph in here to me that just, I can't get by. It says, there's one main objective of this joint powers agreement between the MDA and Whitewater Watershed project. This objective is to support the implementation of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan and the groundwater protection rule within the project area defined. So I mean, this groundwater protection rule has been, you know, kind of, I would say, highly controversial but accepted. And I don't mind doing the right thing, but I don't want to be the guy telling the community, and if I vote for this, I'm the guy saying I support the groundwater protection rule right here.
It's kind of
And I'm implementing, here's my way of implementing it in my community. I'm not enforcement, and I'm not that guy.
Hey, let's get you all together to figure out how to regulate it.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I feel like it is. Like once you come up with a conclusion, really the ultimate goal is to say this is how you need to operate. And then it's the first step to getting there. Well, we already have a best management. Why don't we enforce it?
I can
Okay,
easily.
but like I said,
Yeah.
if you're not at the table, you're done.
I know.
And if
That's
anybody
what-
knows it, I know it in Homestead County because I'm the only farmer left on that board. So
Better stay.
I know
Yeah.
how it works. You know how it works.
Mhm.
And if you're not there to say what you think, you might as well shut the
Yeah,
lights
so
off.
For me, I could have supported this whole thing if it would have stopped at, this objective is to support the implementation of nitrogen fertilizer best management practices.
I would have said
I'm
exploration.
against it. But then when you add the and groundwater protection rule, I mean, that's the teeth right there. That's the government regulation, and they're wanting us, they're wanting to camouflage themselves in sheep's clothing, which to me is us.
I don't see it that way. So let's call the question. We talked about it.
I would have said
Somebody else has something.
exploration. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not. These things scare me because it could set a precedent moving forward.
So I'm not afraid to call a question. It takes a 2/3 majority vote to call a question.
What?
You want me to bring it up to call a question? Is a motion.
It's on the agenda. You just
Yeah,
make the motion.
to call the question is a motion.
Yeah, okay.
It
I make
takes a
the mo-
2/3 majority vote. That means
All right, I'll
at a
make the
board of
motion.
5,
We
it takes
accept
4
this.
people.
I make the motion, we accept the grant. So if we don't get a second, it's over.
Okay, then, yeah, then it's open for further discussion because you'll ask
That's
for
fine.
further discussion.
Okay, we do have a motion.
I'm gonna
Is there-
second it, even
Is
though
it?
I know it's around the same pile like Audit.
Any other discussion?
Yeah. So, we haven't answered, in my view, we haven't answered the question of the parameters of the boundaries of this. Where is it, what area is it actually covering, and why is this board governing or working on areas outside of this board's kind of area or jurisdiction? Wouldn't it be better placed with the One Watershed, One Plan than with this organization? So I'm not gonna support it for that reason alone. It seems like it's just misplaced. And then furthermore, I would like to see, by voting for it, I'm agreeing that these areas all are, quote, in violation of the twist, or, you know, so it's stated in here, if there was just one reading in the last 10 years, was above the accepted 0.8, I think is the number of the nitrate, then they're automatically labeled as being high nitrate. So, I mean, I would want to see that before I'm going to vote to support it. So, I want to see that information, and then I believe that this better fits an organization that covers the entire, or more of, at least more of the boundaries that fall within it. So, those are my reasons for not supporting it.
I have one question.
Mhm.
Is there a deadline to put this through?
Well, they would like to start this as of November 8th this year.
I think too, there's a lot of overlap between this board and what's coming with One Watershed and plan. And maybe it is a better fit for One Watershed and plan. I don't know.
I'm just worried.
That won't be done until
Water.
June 2023. So
I'm
that's,
just
Right.
worried if One Watershed and One Plan gets bogged down with something like this, then I don't know if they'll even get their objective.
they,
But there is a lot of redundancy, and that's what I've discovered, just around the whole conservation industry, so many committees, so much man hours, that it's trying to have public support, but it sometimes seems like nothing really gets done. And we've got a nitrogen management plan, and this I'm just gonna throw out there. I saw some anhydrous tanks going last fall, and I don't know where the little line is on the map. If that guy's putting anhydrous on land that's not supposed to have it or not, sometimes, you just don't know where that line is. Well then, who's really supposed to say anything? Well, the co-op should know where the hell it's going, to be harsh. And somebody's gotta say something if it's really not recommended to go on the fall, which I've never done, but, I mean, it's,
So,
It,
go ahead, Steve.
well, in the same way that SWCDs largely don't want to be the enforcement officers,
Police officers.
I don't want to, I don't want my name in any way even loosely attached to being an enforcer of the groundwater protection rule. Do I disagree with it? Not entirely. Will I abide by it? Absolutely. Am I going to tell someone else that that's what you need to do? Yeah, that's not where no. And it's tying me to the groundwater protection rule. And so I'm not gonna vote for that. I don't stand for an expansion of government, and this is more government, busy work, and more things to do.
Did you have something?
So-
Oh, go ahead.
I going through this again. This is from the Department of Health, right, Sheila? This grant.
it comes to the
MBA.
Department of Ag,
Department
but
of
the
Ag.
Department of Health is a partner.
Okay. What if they went to the Winona County Public Health and they said they would do it? Wouldn't you rather have it here than there? They picked this agency, but it could go to many other government departments to do this
Well,
project.
you and I come from different places on this. I'm not for expanding government at every corner, and I don't vote for every government expansion that comes along. So I would probably try to stop it there. I would probably try to stop it here. I'm not trying to promote government involvement in people's lives.
Okay, I'm not looking for government, but I think we have more oversight here than some other agency that I would agree with you, I'd worry about way more, like a health department or something like that, because then we would have zero input. So that's,
Yeah, I'm not tying myself to that groundwater protection rule.
all right.
I'm just not going to.
So did we write, Sheila, did we write that? Or did they wrote that to
This is
us?
from them, yes, and it has been reviewed by a county attorney as well. And I got her email this morning saying it's the boilerplate grant.
So when they say implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management plan, okay, so
That's kind of what you're doing at SWCD. You're making sure all these farmers are putting on the right amount of manure on the right acres, right things being done.
well, that's not us,
but
but
the trouble is, some people
Oh, yeah,
don't
okay, I
come
guess we're
in.
planning and zoning.
Those are the ones that might need more help than any.
well, what just scared. See, this is what I don't. Implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management plan. If that came across my desk from a company, from OSHA, from anybody, we're implementing a plan. I would say I'm obligated to follow the plan if it was from any sort of authority. What scares me is that this is step one to creating the plan in which people have to follow. That's, I think, part of that scare tactic. It does honestly scare me the way this thing is written. It is wrote that I believe this could be you do something like this, you come back, you put a plan into place that says, here's what this group of people think is, and then somebody else grabs that and says, well, this group's already doing it, we should be doing it here. Well, this group's doing it, we should do it here, now we should do it here. Before you know it, this is just the way we need to do it from it. That's the beginning of that phase when the government gets involved. It's one thing to have your farm bureau or your local farmer-led council that wants to get together and say, hey, we're at. As soon as you start changing the word, I'm honestly in a bit of an agreement. As much as I want this for these people, I just question whether the right people are even going to be there to begin with. I really do, Sheila. Because if they're not, and this is the start of what nitrogen should look like on a farm. That's how it starts, guys. This is the starting block of creating authority and an agenda and an outline. And it says very, very clearly right here, implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management plan.
And the groundwater protection rule, and the next words, and the groundwater protection rule, implementing the groundwater protection rule. I mean,
It scares me. In the
the
state,
new state standard.
it is. So I'm just,
I can't tell that we're not even the quote enforcement officer.
I'm not saying we
agree with
involved,
that.
I think we are. I just don't, it scares me how they are writing this thing. Like, it scares me. Sheila, what?
And then they go around and they'll tell, well, the Whitewater Joint Powers Board is behind it,
This
and
way
we all
it is.
know who them guys are,
Favor,
so
favor,
once we
favor,
can.
before you know it, that's the rule. Just like phosphorus. You want to prove it? How'd phosphorus come to be? Why is the phosphorus rule the way it is? It didn't start because somebody up there said, well, phosphorus should be this. Go to university standards. Prior to the phosphorus rule, they were double. You know how they did it? Enough people came and went and went and went, and they convinced the university to cut them in. Go research it. Eventually, this is how they get you. They start small, they go big, they tell the university this is what we need. It didn't start by farmers who were farming going to the university saying, well, I think we should cut our own toads, let's cut it in half. This is the starts of these things, guys. And that's what's scary, and that's why I'm questioning a lot of these things. So they already did it with phosphorus, here we are with nitrogen. So that's just where I'm at. I don't know. Is there a way, Sheila, that what's going to happen if this doesn't pass? Are they going to go somewhere else? Is this something we went to them, they came to us?
Don contacted me. She initially contacted Daryl, and then of course Daryl was already planning on retiring, so he said that probably would be better fit for the Whitewater.
So they want to get going on it by November 8th,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not a need to get going because there's no deadline for any sort of grant. You know, are they paying us? The total obligation says it's going to be $15,000.
Mileage, my time, and.
It's a .11 position that they're paying for.
Right.
And there's some money in there like for meetings, and I'm gonna guess,
Yep, medium.
a lot like what happened with the farmer-led council. Similar or not?
Not exactly, no. Yes, with the commonality with the farmer-led council is that this is looking only at the farmers and their crop advisors that are within contributing to that WISMA area. Nobody outside that. That's why I asked you if you were having clients in those areas. So it's those
I think I'd be in a
individuals that
little
are the
conflict
needs.
of interest. Because I might have to go defend one or the other.
I just have a question. What's the difference between EMPs and
BMPs are best management practices, and A are alternate management practices that are still haven't been proven yet. But they're being considered as possible an alternative to a BMP. And I don't know what those look like, but
So best management.
More research to determine
The more
if it become a
research,
BMP
right.
then.
Investigated
Yeah.
and shown to be
Problem becomes who stamps that.
positive,
Mhm.
whereas
That's
the
all.
alternative.
Yeah.
Is there like a list of these?
I do not have a list, but
Not really.
I mean, what-
A really good example, though, would be 10 years ago, nobody would talk cover crops. That was an alternative management practice.
Okay.
Today,
I'm
it's
sorry,
getting
I'm
closer
sorry.
to a best management practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's no real list because it's subject to opinion, and that's all this board is it's an opinion. But you get the wrong opinionated people on there, you start setting a precedent over and over and over, it becomes the norm. And the wrong people are showing up to these meetings sometimes, expressing the way they see things, and all of a sudden, you get enough of that happening, it's the financial factor that's taking out the small farms.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, but I was just reading this book, and it had a reference to a paper that was published back in 1805, that was talking about cover crops.
All their theories and things like that, yeah.
Practical application of how to use it, essentially. So, I mean, it's not a new concept, but, yeah, I'm not.
No, it's not a
I'm
new
into
concept,
a-
yeah.
I'm not
But
trying
is
to get
it
into
a recognized concept today? Right? It's not, and not yet, but it's getting closer. 10 years ago, it was almost unheard of. Nobody wanted to even talk about it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to talk about it, right? So, that's the problem. So, anyway, all right. So we do have a motion and a second on the table. I guess we just gotta call.
I'm gonna make a motion to amend Matt's motion to leave out the words "and groundwater protection rule." So if the objective was,
Steve, can you show me what,
so I'm on page 35,
okay,
objective.
Oh, are you in, look on what I handed out. That's,
Well, I'm on the electronic.
yeah, and that was before I went on vacation.
This one that you
The
handed
one that
out?
I handed out.
This one?
Yes. So I don't know what page 35 correlates to you there.
Page 2, what is talking about? Main objective.
And I just, I don't know. What's that?
Page 2 of Exhibit A.
Where you at? On that?
Exhibit A.
Okay, on the top of page
Page
2,
two.
exhibit A, and groundwater protection rule.
No, what? No. A little further. Gotta get to Exhibit A.
Yeah, I just, Steve, while you're looking for that, I would also add this page. I mean, if I read this,
Well, that's-
this came to me, it
that's
says
page
we're
6,
putting
and the first page, after page 6.
the next person down the chain, implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management plan. The next person that knew nothing about this discussion that walked in and says, oh, well, we already have a plan put into place. How are we enforcing that? A lot of people show up to that, you're involved, and say, well, it's already here. What are we doing to enforce it?
I'm looking at that word
Some
objective.
things.
See, that's what I'm looking
That
at.
we're
here.
supposed
Why
to
do it
be
again?
like a farm program.
Why do it again? This clearly states this is a plan. This is what we're doing.
That's why I've written this ridiculous state, because so many things have been implemented and then it never really quite gets there.
The things that probably should be enforced aren't, and the things that are. There's a lot of words in here that are sleight of hand, and that's what scares me, guys. This is the start of this stuff. This is the start of government regulations and rules.
So, okay, so, yeah, page 2, top paragraph, Matt. Well, okay, so this is page 2, like not the first page 2, it's like 6 pages in.
Appendix, the exhibit A, the work plan.
okay,
This one right there. Oh, you gotta dive into here. Dive into this
All
one.
that top paragraph.
oh, this one, okay, I'm looking at our version here. Okay.
This is what I'm proposing to amend right there.
Well, and this one too, look at implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with implementing
was looking at this book, and it was
I don't
here.
like it.
So,
So we're page 2 right here.
Discussing, recommending, anything, not anything.
It's the next page right here.
okay.
Okay, right here.
Okay.
Does everyone else see where I'm at? So my motion is to strike the words "and groundwater protection rule."
But can I just question that?
Okay, yep, of course.
The objective is to support the implementation of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan. You're putting a plan together for that area. When the next person comes in that has no clue this discussion or what the intentions were, all they read is that there's a plan in place. Who enforces that plan? There's a plan. Why aren't we following it? Who's enforcing it? See, we're putting a plan together for that area. We're saying this is what should happen.
Well,
On
the
the outside
hasn't
group,
been seconded, so I can still.
but does that make sense? But do you see where I'm going with that?
Mhm.
I don't like, I think it should say the object is to discuss a nitrogen fertilizer management, not necessarily even plan. One person can't follow that plan.
So
I don't
the groundwater protection rule is, can you explain that to me? Isn't that the state's adopted, really statutorily implementing this, you can't put nitrogen on in the fall?
Yes.
The groundwater protection, yeah, just explain the groundwater protection.
Well, if you go down underneath the background, the groundwater protection rule contains 2 parts. Part 1 restricts the use of commercial nitrogen fertilizer in the fall and on frozen soils in areas with vulnerable groundwater. Part 2 responds to public water supply wells with elevated nitrate levels. So we're talking about those GWSMAs that have elevated nitrate levels. Under Part 2, vulnerable areas and drinking water supply management areas where groundwater recharges the public water supply are designated at mitigation levels. And that's where these 3 GWSMAs are at. It's called a mitigation level 2, depending on the nitrogen concentrations found in public wells. A level 1 is designated when the nitrogen concentrations in the public well have been greater than or equal to 5.4, but less than 8. So that is not the case here. At level 2, which is the case for these 2 GWSMAs, is designated when nitrogen concentrations in the public wells have been greater than or equal to 8 at any point in the previous 10 years or is projected to exceed health risk limit within the next 10 years. So they're also looking at, okay, if it spiked above the 8, okay, was that just an anomaly? Or do we have a trend where it's increasing? So that's-
Okay, so I'm gonna, thank you.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna back up to though is really the legality of the groundwater protection rule is Minnesota state statute. And to me, that needs to be implemented by the state of Minnesota. And I don't wanna become, by my vote, part of this agreement that says that I support and am going to, the objective is to implement the groundwater protection rule. I'm not linking myself to that. That's state statute, and they should have their own enforcing officers, and they should implement that however they're gonna implement it. And I don't want to be hooked up to it. So if that's in there, I can't support it, period.
What I see here is they want to develop a plan and say, this is how you need to farm.
Yeah, and I know it
That's
seems like
just
a way out there.
started. That's how
statement, but
phosphorus
yeah,
started.
to me,
They did the
it's,
same thing with phosphorus.
they're trying to use our good names to
Make
infiltrate the community. That's how I feel.
You get us into the door, get us started in this
Yeah.
bad area, and then tomorrow, well, that's bad, it's double. Well, why shouldn't we be doing it for the
Your
others?
neighbors
And then it
need
becomes, well,
Jacob
now we need
supports
to do it for preventative management. We got the management in, guys, this scares me. To me, it is this line right here. that says this objective is to support the implementation. Implementation, that means to make it happen.
Well, that's our.
Of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan. If this is to be determine what that plan is, that means every farmer needs to farm the same way.
So you just don't like the idea of,
I love the idea of farmer-led councils. I love the idea of getting together as a group and those farmers discussing with Minnesota to say, hey, look, here's our problems. I farm differently than him. I have manure. I don't. My ground's lighter. I have a lot of knolls. I do this. I can't always get out there in time. Here's our problems. How can we work together? Teach me, educate me, show me the financial return, ROIs. Not develop a plan, rubber stamp it, the next group comes in and says it's already developed. Why aren't we forcing it? There's economics, and what it's doing is it's driving out the family farm.
Well, my well has been over 10 for 10 years now, and this might not even do me any good, but if anybody wanted to start with a young family there and have babies, they're not supposed to drink the water already. So we got to do something more than talk about it.
I'm not saying it's the wrong thing in any way.
I just don't like.
I just don't want to be legally attached to state statute.
I think
this seems like it's linking my board and
We're
my
not-
position on this
We're not going
board.
to be able to hire any like enforcement officials or anything, so really it's no
But
different
it ain't
than
going to be me.
any other.
It ain't going to be me.
So why can't we, why does this have to be, Sheila, just a question. When they came at this, because I think we should be involved, and Matt's point, I think we need to be involved. This is why we sit here as a board, even if it is maybe a lot outside of our scope or whatever it is. You're right, I would not want this to go to somebody else. Maybe an SWCD group. What scares me is the agenda. What's the real agenda? Why do they need farmers on the council? Well, the farmers told us this is the way they wanted to do it. See, that's the
They're trying to
fear.
get
It's
community
back-
buy-in for their.
Trying to get community buy-in by using farmers, but you think they're stupid, know who shows up to these things?
Well, if we say we're supporting the plan, I mean.
So you get
Steve,
5
You
farmers.
in essence already did it by saying, I think it's the right thing. That's supporting, doesn't really say we're gonna go crank anybody's arm. under-
Well,
No,
the wagon house.
but
the
that's
support of
different
the-
than me putting a vote to
Right.
enforcing the groundwater protection.
So maybe your amendment idea is a way we could compromise.
I'm supportive of this concept. I'm not supportive of this group or myself in particular being tied to enforcement of the groundwater protection.
I think there's a difference between implementation and enforcement. That's a whole other argument.
Don't disagree, but it starts with implementation. Then the next group comes in and says, who's enforcing it? And then it becomes common practice and it becomes law. You want proof of it? Show me how the phosphorus rule came into play. Exactly how it happened. And now we're doing it with nitrogen. Now we're going to do it here. This is how Europe got to where Europe is. Go study it. Study Europe from 1970 to current. That's the way this happened. They said slowly by slowly by slowly by slowly, and they just started taking control until all of a sudden now you got to walk in and lobby for it.
I guess I need a little educating only because I can't even recall how the phosphorus rule has affected me in any of my fertilizer use over the last 35
Okay, so
years.
there, right there lies the problem. You get 5 people on that board that something doesn't affect them. They don't care. Sure, go ahead, put it into
So, I
place.
mean, why though?
But the 5 other people that it does, that probably should have showed up. That's right. See, and so now you get 5 people on a board, and 3 of them think alike. 3 people just govern the whole thing for an acre. Is it farmer-led council? Or is it predetermined before it even happens? And proof of that is look at what's happening with Owen County. You brought it up. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to avoid. So when you start saying things like to implement something, and you must follow the groundwater rule, I'm in complete agreement. If you could take that out of here and just keep this as Minnesota Department wants to talk to farmers and get their opinions to help try to and educate them and help try to figure out how to move forward. That's what this should be about. Not implementing new rules, not enforcing what's already here, whether clearly being enforced or indirectly being enforced or having intention of it should be enforced. Why is it? To me, this is about education. We got cover crops into existence, not through enforcement, but through leading
Proven that
and
they
education.
work.
Right. Guys like myself, boards like this, that's what we need to do with the nitrogen. This to me is first step to mandates.
I'm
That's what
willing
it
to
is.
support it. Is there any way we can make a few tweaks so that we could
How many,
move it forward?
if we start making too many tweaks, we'll stay just.
That's it, but-
You know, this is what they're proposing, so we start tweaking it, MDA or carbon copy, yeah, it's correct.
So my question is, so
I'm
there's a
okay with
motion,
that.
a second on the table.
Well, right, I mean, there's
Yeah.
a motion.
I
and a
mean,
second.
either we're gonna do what they say as they say, or we're gonna do, what we say, or the agreement isn't gonna happen.
I got a question, Sheila. Is this something that, I guess I'm gonna kind of go back to the way I see this. I see this as the first steps in starting government regulation in another deal. And they're already doing it. That's what the groundwater was. It was the first step to control nitrogen. Now we're going into these other areas saying, well, they're out of those areas. Let's try to control it here. But let's get the farmers involved. And then once they give us what they want, we can go down here and we'll amend it. Why does it have to be this way? When they came to us with these things, I understand there may or may not, there's probably good intentions on the front side, but on the back side, these are a lot of times how these things happen. Can we go back to them and say, why can't we just take this money, right, that they want to do, and why can't we just go have open conversations with farmers?
I think that is the intent, is to have conversations with the farmers, to come up with, okay, here's the problem, what can we do to fix it? And that the farmers that are on these teams are the team leads. They're the ones who will be submitting, these are our best management practices for this WISMA, because this is what we feel is appropriate. And
But, so I get all that, because that was stated from the very beginning, but why does there have to be any submittal? Why does there have to be any objective to implement something? Why can't it just be an open discussion that says?
That's what comes back to bite you 5 years down the road.
That's exactly right.
He's like, do
There it
you
is.
remember that meeting all those years ago?
Yep.
You
Well, we got a
voted
plan
for
put
this.
in it.
I'm
We
like,
voted
really?
for
I
that.
voted for that?
Oh, wait a minute, it changed, or why does there have to be such a final objective? See, this is that squeezing for both sides. And this is the distrust in government right now, because in the fine lines, if some schmuck doesn't read the whole thing and pick it apart, they'll come back and say, it doesn't say or it doesn't say this, it says implementation. Well, then we have I just felt as though it would be okay. No, that's,
So I had proposed an amendment that failed due to lack of a second, where I proposed to strike the and groundwater protection rule. Josh, you seem to come from a position that you don't want the nitrogen fertilizer management plan as part of it. And the reason I didn't object to that earlier was because it says the objective is to support. So to me, that's not an ironclad statement like the groundwater protection rule, which there's a state statute that we're clearly supporting implementation of and taking a position on that state statute. So that's why I hadn't included that. But if it made you more comfortable, I would make another motion to amend Matt's motion to leave that entire sentence out where it says this objective is to support the implementation of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan and groundwater protection rule within the defined area.
well, see, to me, if you took that whole sentence out and you
Okay,
just.
so there's a second.
I'll second that.
Perfect. And I'm going to comment. There is one main objective of the Joint Powers Agreement between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Whitewater Watershed Project. And then, if we just skip that whole thing, and it would be to accomplish this, you would add goal, they need assistance identifying nitrogen fertilizer best management practices and alternative practices. That, to me, is what this should be about. It's the farmers coming to them saying, here's what we feel. Not trying to implement anything, not trying to tag ourselves to any rule that's already there.
And the next sentence, as well as promoting the implementation of these best management
There it
practices and alternative management
Not-
practices and targeted vulnerable.
Not
That's
creating
what
a
we've
plan
done in this
saying,
organization in the
something
past,
else.
and I
Yeah.
don't have any problems with that. I just can't
That whole sentence to me needs to come in.
So the sentence saying this objective is to support the implementation of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan and the groundwater protection rule within the project area defined. Strike that whole sentence and then just go on to the next sentence. Or there are other
You could get
edits.
rid of the second one too. The goal of the NFP is, I mean, that's just a statement. So really what we're after is the objective of the joint power agreement is to identify nitrogen fertilizer best management practices. Just
I don't have
ident-
any problem with a goal
Yeah, I mean, you could.
or
it's
a,
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. It's just a statement. It is. So, I would second if that's what you.
so it's already been seconded.
No, it's a second. I'm fine with that, Steve. Yep, strike the sentence.
So we have a
Then
motion. and
I
a second.
can get
But I think we're good. Yeah, I just don't, I don't want to get this thing hooked. So we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by so.
Yeah,
any other
to
discussion?
amend, yeah, okay. Yep.
To amend.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Can we state what the amendment is exactly so I know?
You want me to, or do you, so,
So I'll state it, or,
No, that's
and
it.
you correct me if I'm wrong. So the amendment is to take out the second sentence on page 2. This objective, take this, omit this section. This objective is to support the implementation of nitrogen fertilizer management plan and groundwater protection rule within the project area defined. Because we're taking that out, it makes no sense to leave the second sentence in because it's not about that anymore. It's about BMPs and AMTs. That's why I said it doesn't make sense to
I
leave
think
it.
it's fine,
So,
just that sense.
yeah.
Then it just says the goal, that means.
The goal of the NFP is protect, which is fine. That's just a statement.
Okay.
So we can do that. That sentence omitted.
Are you also taking out the implementation of,
Yeah, because it says it here. I don't think we have to define what that is. It's just where it involves implementing, because it says it there and it says it there.
So that next sentence, the goal of, we have to put in nitrogen, we have to spell out because what NFMP and GPR are, because that's explained in that previous paragraph that you're taking out, so to.
That's why I said we could just omit it. It doesn't need
Well,
to
to put
be.
the words in maybe, or,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't pertain to BMPs and AMTs, that's why, because then you have to go back and rewrite that whole thing. So if we just admit it, it's gone. So, can I so I'll make an amended motion on top of it, is to, this is great, huh? It's getting all
An amendment to the
confusing.
amendment.
Amendment to the amendment. It's all right, we've done this, I've done this many times. Taking out the implementing the nitrogen fertilizer management plan, page 1, just omitting that because it's also being admitted in this sentence as a whole. And then taking out the second and the third sentence in that paragraph. So basically it reads, would just read that we're looking at BMPs and AMTs in this scenario. We're not implementing or doing or tying or maintaining.
I would accept that amendment to that amendment, if there's a second to it.
For a second to that?
second.
Okay. So now that has to be one.
Yeah. Okay, so that, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, just for clarification, because I'm confused, okay. Eliminating from that, on page 2,
Let's go to page 1 first. Up on the top, we voted to get rid of the implementing the nitrogen, the NFMP, just out of the description. So it's a Whitewater, Watershed, Point Park, Exhibit A, Winona, Wabash Counties, Utica, LG, just taking that. Then on page 2, top of the page, second sentence, starting with this objective, all the way through this third sentence, ending with quality of groundwater.
Just read just read the balance of that paragraph now, to me.
okay. There is one main objective of this joint powers agreement between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Whitewater Watershed Project. To accomplish this, the MDA needs assistance identifying nitrogen fertilizer best management practices and alternative management tools that can protect groundwater in this area, as well as promoting implementation of his BMPs and AMTs and targeted vulnerable cropland acres to protect groundwater.
Yeah.
Should we have nitrogen fertilizer management plan in there, just to tell what we're supporting? I mean, it just doesn't sound quite right, maybe.
Well, because we took it out, it's worded differently, so I guess it would just,
If we're still in discussion, if that's what takes to move this forward, I can support all that. But I think Bob's probably right. By the time we remove all these teeth, they're gonna say,
No.
this isn't what we're after.
we want teeth.
I think we'd have a better chance of getting it through with just saying, my original motion of just the groundwater protection rule, eliminating it. I'm supportive of all this. I think there's a very real chance that they
Could
could
be
just,
rejected.
and that's okay. I mean, that's fine, because that's what this board is agreeing on, and we want to do. So I can support the amendment to the amendment.
It's already been seconded and passed.
Well, then we're just at the amendment.
What's that?
Then we're just at passing the amendment. That's been amended. That still has to be passed. We haven't voted on the full motion yet.
No, we haven't, yeah.
We voted on the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment, we got that.
Okay, so now the amendment that's been amended needs to be voted on. And then we can vote on the main motion.
Yeah, I should have wrote this down.
He's right.
Yeah, no, he's right.
Yes.
Okay, so we voted on the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Steve, is that we either leave, somebody's saying something to.
I was just a sidebar discussion. I said, are we still in discussion on the amendment?
Yeah.
But I said that. Now what?
But this is the opportunity, if we want to change any of that wording, we could still technically do it now.
Well, that was the point of your amendment, though. I mean, we already hashed it over once.
Yep.
I went down that road.
Okay, so we got it.
Right.
So basically, we're gonna vote on the amendment
Would be to vote
of
on
what just Sheila just
what Sheila just wrote.
wrote.
I don't know if we're clear.
Yes.
I could just make just one more amendment, and I'll actually read it.
Go for it. Why not?
Okay. Well, this part, I don't know about the prior page, but on top of whatever this is, there is one main objective to this joint powers agreement, GPA, between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, MGA, and the Minnesota Whitewater Watershed Project. And maybe we should have, this objective is to support the implementation of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan, stop, and forget about the groundwater protection rule, because that caused problems. And then we'd have the goal of, and then just the nitrogen fertilizer management plan and not the groundwater protection rule. And to accomplish this, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture needs assistance identifying, and that's what we're doing by supposedly getting groups together to talk about it. So that part of this paragraph at least.
So, I must not follow closely enough. How is that different from when I said originally just strike the words and groundwater protection rule?
Well, I don't think it is, maybe.
Okay.
But then when he
Other than
started,
he just took out another part of the second sentence.
when we took out more, then it didn't read right. That's the only thing that caught my attention. I mean, it didn't really make sense.
We didn't really catch that, it didn't read right after we took the sentences out.
I was trying to just smooth it out, but I think it's more like what you said. to
Because
start.
you took out the nitrogen fertilizer or the groundwater, but in the second sentence. So I was just trying to.
I just took the
all-
statute out of it. The rest of it I felt was more recommendations, which I didn't have a problem.
I think just taking that line out does accomplishes both, really.
So I'm fine. Just, we should have it so it reads smoothly.
Right, because you say, the first sentence is, there's one main objective, and then it says this objective is, but you took out this objective is, so there's,
So it just made it unclear for someone reading it.
At this point, the one made it objective is to accomplish the, okay, leave out the word this, to accomplish the MDDA needs. Okay, no, you're right.
We want to do the nitrogen fertilizer management plan, and how we're going to do that is get ideas of how that can work.
I still, yeah, I guess my whole.
What if we just went farther and what happens if we just strike the words to accomplish this? Strike those words and then it reads, there's one main objective of this joint powers agreement between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. The MDA needs assistance identifying nitrogen fertilizer best management practices and alternative management tools
Yes.
that can protect the groundwater in this area,
Yes.
as well as promoting the implementation of these BMPs and AMTs in targeted vulnerable cropland areas to protect groundwater.
Because my whole thing was if we live in the NFMP, it's saying that's the way you need to do it in these areas. Because it says support the implementation of the NFMP. We are saying this is the way to do it. Our goal is to get you to do it. To me, that takes a position rather than I believe we should be here educating and listening and coming up with creative solutions. And that creative education, their solutions, is BMTs and AMTs identified by the unique situation that every farmer has. We can't can farming into one thing. We can't do cover crops and no-till is the only way to go. I don't care what anybody says.
Sorry to see him.
Does that make sense?
Well, it seems to me like supporting it isn't enforcing it. So supporting it is finding ways to
Yeah.
make it happen and do better.
Yeah.
And I don't quite see it as viciously as enforcing to say we support it.
But the
So-
question becomes, who begins to enforce it? Once somebody outside of the group says the plan is already in existence and it's been adopted by other local agencies, who's supporting it? And then it just turns into a question of who supports it. It's what the SWCD got put into position with the whole buffer rule. Somebody from the top made a decision, we became the police force. It's the same thing. Now you're just flipping it and working it from the bottom side up and saying, well, you put a plan into place, why isn't anybody following it? Well, who begins to police it? Well, we'll find somebody to police it. I just don't believe that the power of farming should be left in 3 or 5 people's hands. I just don't believe in it. And that's, I get we're trying to protect water, but to me, we're taking a position of saying we support that and we also support the groundwater rules. So I love the idea of starting it at the MDA needs assistance. So we end it at the first sentence, the MDA needs assistance in identifying.
So you want the words, the goal of the NFMP and groundwater protect is to protect and improve the quality of groundwater. You want that stricken too?
That's what he had brought up. He had said so it would read to this fashion. Page 1 would still be omitted, that line, because we take out just any sort of implementation of a rule. We just simply say this is exploratory and we want more information. There's one main objective of the joint power agreement between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Whitewater Watershed project. They have a goal. To accomplish this, see, that's where it gets goofy right now.
No, you wanted to strike to accomplish this.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
There it is, to get rid of that. There we go. Whitewater Watershed
So
project.
you start with the.
The MDA needs assistance identifying. So the goal is that the MDA needs assistance identifying nitrogen fertilizer best management practices and alternatives, so on and so forth. The goal is to identify that. And they want farmers to come and help them figure out what they can do. Not implement a rule, not a stamp that we agree with the water deal. This is exploratory surgery. Help us understand. We've identified an area that's worse than less. What can you guys do? What are you willing to do? That, to me, is what we should be doing. Everything else in that line looks like enforcement or the beginning of rules, regulations, and enforcement. We start here, we
So
get
we-
it in place.
We have an amendment, we have voted on an amendment to the amendment. And now you're creating an additional amendment to that amendment. My initial amendment was just to strike the words "and groundwater protection rule." So we need to vote on Lynn's amendment, so we need that, because there was discussion, that's where you were at.
Yep.
That's all.
So
So
we
now
actually,
Lynn's amendment needs to be read for me to understand it, and then we vote on that, and then we can vote on the main motion to approve it.
Okay, we'll go through it, but I can go either way. There is one main objective of the Joint Powers Agreement, JPA, between the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, MDA, and Whitewater Watershed Project. And I was going to leave in this objective is to support the implementation of the Nitrogen Fertilizer Management Plan, MFMP, period, because, and then leave out and groundwater protection rule. And the reason for that was only because we're just supporting the idea of the nitrogen management plan. But, and then the next thing is we want to make it flow smoothly into it. So, the goal of the NFMP is to protect and improve quality of groundwater. And then to accomplish this, MDA needs assistance identifying best management practices. So basically, I only was taking out the groundwater protection rule part, which seems like the more invasive. But, so, there you are. Then if we want to do something else after that, that's fine.
Well, I guess
So-
I can't support that because really you're just kind of undoing Josh's amendment, to my amendment, and kind of taking it back to what my initial amendment was.
I think so.
so he's made a motion, if there's no second, it doesn't go anywhere, it's dead, you go back to either my motion that's already been approved, or we can amend some simple words if somebody wants to make that. Actually, I will probably remake that motion to amend it. So is there a second on Lynn's? Hearing none, we move forward. So then I will make the amended motion that it reads to the following. Page 1 is still admitted under this line, Sheila, and it will read like this. There is one main objective of the Joint Powers Board Agreement, JPA, between Minnesota Department of Agriculture, MDA, and the Whitewater Watershed. The MDA needs assistance identifying, so this is what the objective is. The MDA needs assistance identifying nitrogen fertilizer best management practice and so forth to the end of that paragraph. Simple as that.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
So we're striking those two sentences. And that's it.
I'm just going to show
So
it.
that's still an amendment to my initial
Yep.
amendment, so now we're.
Now we gotta do the written, so we're gonna go right here.
Mhm.
Right here. So
Okay.
it's gonna read main objective, and then that objective is the MDA needs assistance. So we're basically getting rid of everything, rules and regulations, bringing it to an open discussion.
And then the page 1 at the title, removing just the word implementing the,
That whole middle sentence is what
The whole
my
middle
initial was.
sentence.
Just, this is Whitewater, Watershed, involving these counties.
okay. All right.
Then it is not, so we still gotta finish this out. But my whole take on this is, if you come to a farm, to the people that should be there, they're gonna say, wait a minute here, you're shoving rules down, I want nothing to do with this. I'm trying to get it so people feel like this is an actual discussion, not we have a back-hidden agenda, and we support and support these things. So now, with this said, we have to make a motion.
The motion's there.
Motion is there. Need a second. No, it's already been seconded too. So now we see the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 What are we voting on now?
Only, she just read, I can read it or she can read it, he just read it.
Well, okay, I got this changed to the first paragraph on page 2.
That's what it's,
And delete
that's what it's
this,
boiled down to.
that's, so we're voting on
If I
the
will.
contract itself, actually, at this
Yes,
point, or
yep.
Yep.
with all of these changes.
So we made a motion to the amendment to amend it. Now we're actually making a motion to say we're going to implement this contract
As we amended it.
as we've amended it. So that's, so we have that motion in second. So any other discussion? Any other question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Right?
Okay, that motion now carries, so this is implemented. Now, we obviously need to go back to them and say, hey, we just had a little problems with some of the terminology in here, the board would want to stamp their names, saying we support everything that you come up with. We want to
Yeah,
keep
then
this,
we'll just see.
we'll see what they say. Like, if there was a deadline for the grant or a deadline for this, I could see that, but there isn't. This is just a, hey, we want to, right? And so I just don't see any. I mean, this is just our way of saying, hey, let's have a discussion. So what we just did is say, well, are you willing to go down this road? And there we go. Okay, moving on. Thank you. That was a lot. Whitewater 319 non-point source reduction grant. These are just, there's nothing in your packet. These are
No,
just-
nothing in the packet, just to update, and I appreciated Josh being able to sign those checks. In the interim, at the last meeting, we had a motion with a threshold of what to spend for remaining expenditures that couldn't get spent before the last meeting, so we had checks to do. There was just one little glitch. I came to the Olmsted SWCD meeting with that cost share payment, and unbeknownst to me, there was, NRCS did a change in the size of the pipes that were used for that structure, so then we're $50 off. And so the check that I originally did was over the 75% threshold, so I had to redo the check. So that was one of the checks that Josh also signed. And, but anyway, when I just can't say enough, the cooperation and the coordination that went on between the three SWCDs to spend those funds down was phenomenal, and I just want to let you all know that it was a lot of good teamwork, and we spent it all except for less than $140. So, and right now I'm working on the final report to submit it, and I'm waiting on some of the match, or the in-kind match from the SWCDs, but I think that went really well. I think we broke a record in spending down $48,000. And that's all I had for the update, just to let you know what transpired since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Surface water assessment grant update.
Yep, and just to let you know that we are all done monitoring. Last monitoring day, I think, was September 28th. And, no, we had to do it on the 29th, because that was one of the redos from shipping it. And I'm working on the final report, but I'm just letting you know that for that final report for that grant, one of the things I'm gonna recommend, because they always have a section, what would you do different? And I would say what we would do different is to go with a local lab for the E. coli, and that would be the Olmsted lab. But right now, the state doesn't allow that lab because they're not certified for all the parameters that we were measuring. But I think if we were to take a grant like this in the future, that would be my recommendation, at least for Southeast Minnesota, for any other partners that are doing this, is that they have the option to do a local lab for E. coli. So I will include that in the final report.
Okay. So we're on the back page. Kind of already ran through. Okay, any other agency reporting, I guess? Anything else? Do you have anybody from outside?
As a future agenda item, I don't know where that would fall in, but usually in our planning board meetings it would fall in here. I would just like, if this agreement that we spent so much time on gets approved by the state after it's been altered, I'd like maybe updates on how the selection process for the committee is going. I certainly, want to make sure we're inclusive of all the different farmers in the area.
Yeah, and I like to add to that too, how it was, who it was introduced to, and, this alludes to Matt's point of if it's introduced, I want to know how and who it was introduced to, in those areas, who was given the options or, some sort of validation to that, because I just would really like to see more people that I feel that some of these things affect being on these boards. And I think if this is, I'm just making a statement, in conjunction with Steve's statement, I feel that part of the positions of being involved in these things is to break down the current barriers of who is actually probably being the most vocal and get more people involved. And before the regulations come in, the stamping comes in, and will you support this government rule and this and that. So, yeah, I think there needs to be more transparency and more sort of looking for accountability as to who gets on these boards. I really do. Okay, anything else? Not. Motion to adjourn. Oh, next meeting, December
Next
17th.
meeting,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's going to change. That's a Friday.
Wait. December 17th, whatever that third, I don't know if I have the right date on there.
It's a Friday. That's December 17th.
Okay, I should have December 16th, but December 16th is Watershed and Olmsted SWCDs. They have their meetings typically on the fourth Thursday, but for December, they're the third Thursday. So that conflicts, so we'll have two people absent for that day. And then the week prior is Winona's SWCD meeting. So what other dates would be viable with this group for a December meeting?
15th or 17th is
Yeah,
okay.
we do.
The day before, the day after, normal meeting day.
Everything's fine with me. I'll work it out, except my days of meeting.
Wait, do you have your schedule, Matt?
Mine. So you're talking the Wednesday or Friday?
Wednesday
Yeah,
or
the
Friday?
15th.
Day should be fine. Day before or the day after.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, that's fine. No, that's,
Just for, to kind of put something down when we say the day before.
Okay.
That-
Yeah, that'd probably be a little handier for Olmsted, just because we deal with it here and usually word on that.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, so December 15th, Wednesday, the third Wednesday,
8:30.
8:30. And I will double check if that works with here, and if it doesn't,
Any other discussion? Then we have motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. So, yeah.
Second? Okay, second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
we'll seconded.
Bob did. Thanks for the refreshment.
Yep.
Yes, a lot of them.
I just,
Okay. Let's see, got to sign.